Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Wacky Wonderful Show. I'm here.
And I'm here. My name is Joe.
Yeah, and I'm Wyatt.
Hi.
Hi.
We're here talking about Harry Potter again, my man.
Yeah?
Yeah.
We're doing it.
We're geeks.
Right.
I guess. I don't know. I'm going to move this slightly over the center. So we have a couple awesome little segments that me and Wyatt have each individually prepared for you, talking about Harry Potter, talking about filmmaking in Harry Potter and how you can learn from it. And I think you're going to be breaking down Snape in this video.
Do a little bit of a character breakdown, motivation breakdown kind of thing.
Sick. That's going to be fun.
It's going to be fun.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Let's acknowledge this real quick.
Yeah.
We got airplanes.
We do have airplanes, and we can't control it.
We can't. It's the military.
If we were to just wait for the planes to fly over to give you guys a chance to watch us without the background noise, we wouldn't get anywhere. We'd never record.
We'd never record.
It would be...
We think the sky is clear, and then the U.S. military is like, nope, we're sending boys up.
Actually, I think these boys are coming back.
Yeah.
They're like, all right, boys, it's 6 o'clock.
Come on back.
Come on back.
Anyway, so there might be some of that throughout the video. We thank you for your patience. However, before we get into our segments, we want to talk briefly, opening this up, about why Harry Potter works as a story, why people enjoy it. What are your first thoughts?
I mean, I know why it works for me. I don't know why it works for other people.
Why does it work for you?
The way I think the books are written, at least the first couple books are written, they're all sort of mystery books.
Yeah.
And also, it's sort of a closed area. It's Hogwarts, and you know Hogwarts, and so the story is isolated inside Hogwarts, but there's always something strange and new happening, and so I think it works because we get to see our main characters grow up, change, and develop in experiencing new things in a familiar place, but oftentimes with unfamiliar circumstances.
Yeah. I know for me, I think it kind of works because I like stories with a lot of rules. And in the world of magic and mystery and, wacky wizarding things, I love the rules that are involved. Now, I haven't read the books, but I love films. And so I've seen all of the films multiple times. And I would say that especially early on, when they're introducing the world, you have to grab onto a boot to teleport, or I don't know, you have to go to the wand shop and the wand kind of selects you as a wizard. Like, there are a lot of rules. There's a lot of gritty details that you have to follow, and that's very exciting for me personally. Like, I think that's just an appealing story that has a lot of detail. There's a lot of thought has been put into it. It's exciting to enter the world of wizardry and Harry Potter and go to the school of Hogwarts and see even just how they get to the school.
It's also fun to have them be like, oh, there's sometimes, for example, in the book I'm listening to is The Order of the Phoenix. They'll mention they're doing the owl testing so that they can eventually get into, regular wizarding life, regular wizarding jobs. And they're just reading about jobs at the ministry, jobs at Gringotts. And then, there's random things in the book or in the movies even that there's no explanation for, where they're like, magical mushroom farmer. Like the writer gives you words that don't mean anything, but says them because they mean something in this world, and they make sense to everybody in this world. That's the fun part.
I think also the characters were, for the most part, well thought out. There's a lot of talk about Harry Potter as a character in a lot of things. I know you've seen him in the films, you've read the books, you understand Harry Potter, who he is from a storytelling point of view. But I think just the complex characters, that each character has a history, either with Hogwarts or being a wizard, or even just the idea of the least likable characters, like Harry Potter's aunt and uncle, I guess, who raised him.
Yeah.
You know, there's history behind all of these characters.
Yeah, they
even
all
if
have
it's
a little
wacky.
bit of a story.
Yes,
Yeah.
they all do, and that's an appealing an appealing side to the story for me. And I think that's why it works in that capacity for myself. Both the rules, the setup for this world, for how it works, and then discover later on in the show how things can be broken, some of these rules, and how these rules, some of them can't be broken.
Oh yeah, that's very important for a lot of stories. Set up your rules at the beginning, then break them. It's really important.
Yeah,
that's with a lot of high fantasy or even hard magic systems, where you get into, it's like, here's the magic, or here's the rules of this world, and then halfway through there's a character that completely defies those rules.
Yeah,
and it's either because they're getting around it with some sort of loophole, they've discovered something new, they're unique.
Yeah,
break the rules to make it interesting.
Yeah,
you know.
And I mean, that's even, in some fashion, that's even a part of the 3-part storytelling narrative. You know, you have the setup, you set the rules for the story, and then later you have, you know, they start the journey. And along the journey, they hit a confrontation. And sometimes that confrontation does defy what this world and what the characters as people are supposed to do, what we expect them to do.
Or if you're not going to break the rules, good storytelling can be how your characters manipulate the rules, how they use the hard, cold reality of their situation to their advantage.
Yeah.
You know, can your character conjure spears out of thin air? That
That'd
doesn't
be pretty
sound
sick.
interesting, except, you know, he can't make them fly or anything. He can just conjure them and they're there.
And he has to know how to throw them.
But how does he throw them? Is he accurate? Does he use them to scale walls or prop open doors? How does he cook marshmallows on them? Make it interesting, make it fun.
Yeah.
You know, how does the character manipulate the rules that they've been given?
And all of a sudden, halfway through the story, he, without his hands, gets a spear to fly through the air.
Just conjures a spear
and it flies.
Flies through it with his
Rules
mind.
change.
Rules
now we
change.
have a story.
Mm-hmm.
Heck yeah. You know, Harry Potter has a lot of those kind of examples.
Yes. What I was going to ask what makes it interesting to you, but you just told me.
Yeah. And actually, we're gonna be watching in my segment. We're actually gonna be watching a clip from Harry Potter where certain rules are broken. It's actually, I think, from the 4th film where they have they're drawing names from the flame for who's going to be the champion.
Oh yeah.
And Harry's name is like conjured up. And he's like, no one added my name. I didn't put my name in, you know? And it was just, it's a rule breaking thing. And so everyone is in awe of it. But we'll get to that.
They explain how they do that in the books. They never explain that in the movies.
Well,
it's just like,
chosen one.
The disguised Mad Eye Moody put it in there. You know, so Barty Crouch Jr. disguised as Mad Eye Moody put it in there, but they didn't explain how he got it in there. Is that he put it under the name of a 4th school. So there was Hogwarts.
So they went into the detail.
Yeah, they were like, he used a 4th school that wasn't involved in this tournament and only put one name under it, and it was Harry's.
Oh yeah,
it's like what an easy workaround.
But the thing is, it's unheard of. So in order to unravel this mystery, you have a story.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, they have to compete.
That book's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll read these books at some point.
You got to read them because there's a lot of differences.
All right. Well, going towards, I guess, the opposite of books, not really opposite. I'm going to talk a little bit about the filmmaking of Harry Potter, and I'm going to be talking about specifically the 180-degree rule in filmmaking, and I'm using Harry Potter scenes from the movies to explain this rule.
Yeah.
So you ready to get for me to get into it?
Right. Yeah.
All right, let's do it. Hello, welcome back to yet another video regarding filmmaking, regarding learning filmmaking from Hollywood films. In this video, we're going to be talking about Harry Potter. We're going to be taking scenes from Harry Potter, looking at them, and breaking down film rules, film tips, film methods, filmmaking methods, and we're going to be analyzing it and learning from them. And I always believe that, like, if you have a camera, if you have something to record audio on, and you have a software that everyone can get one even for free on their phone, have the ability to edit clips together, well, then you can start making your own films. And as long as you understand certain principles, you could actually start applying these easy concept principles to your videos and start making your stuff look like Hollywood cinema like tomorrow. And it's a simple concept. Today we're going to be talking about the 180-degree rule. Now, I'll go ahead and explain that here. I have a visual aid for you to take a look at. Basically, 180-degree rules is understanding that it's half a circle. So you have 360 degrees on an oval or circle or whatever. And if you can visualize without actually seeing it, that's why I have kind of a top-down image of this. This is a basic idea of what the 180-degree rule is in filmmaking. If you take two characters in a scene, myself, someone that's facing me right here, and we're talking to each other, well, you can imagine an invisible line is going from them, from me, through the other person according to where we're facing. And as you can see, top down, imagine those little points of their noses facing each other. Well, a simple concept is when you choose one of the sides to film on that invisible line, you need to, as much as possible, stay on that side. Now, this rule is broken many times if you start analyzing cinema, but if you notice, there are actual specific ways in which they break it. Sometimes that there will be a cut where someone walks through the line, and we actually see that in Harry Potter. Someone will walk through the line in between the characters and almost break the line and say, hey, we're establishing a new line. Or you will actually have a continuous camera shot where, say, like the camera, I'm talking to someone here, the camera is on this side of me, and imagine the camera is going to move around me to where the camera kind of does one of these numbers. All of a sudden, the camera visually showed a transition to the opposite side of that invisible circle. That is a great way to break or switch sides of that. But the reason why this rule was established is because back in the early days, and even today, but especially back then, film was harder to see. It was black and white. It was a little bit more difficult to identify characters really quickly. And so if you were to take someone that is facing off the camera this way or this way and break that direction, all of a sudden your characters are looking the opposite way. Well, all of a sudden the audience will get confused. So that's essentially why it was established. And now moving into the future, we still use this principle because it is visually pleasing. It's almost like a third person looking at a scene and visualizing what's happening without having to be everywhere in this 360-degree area all at once. Again, there are films that break this, but it's actually kind of hard to find a film that's made by Hollywood where it's like especially 2 or 3 characters interacting where they do break this rule. And sometimes they'll film right on the line, which again, we will see here in just a few minutes. But that's a basic understanding. You pick a side, you stay on it, unless you have reason to move from it. Let's go ahead and get to the first example I have of Harry Potter, a scene from Harry Potter where a group of boys are talking to this door that has a painting on it. So I'm going to go ahead and play this. So this is just a setup wide shot, and this is the staircase. Now the boys are going to come up, and you'll see the establishment. All right, so right off the bat, you'll notice right now they are on top of the line. The boys are walking away from the camera, and we are facing directly towards that door. But also notice that door is it's not centered up, it's slightly leaning to the left side of the screen, and that's because the camera is slightly angled away towards the, I guess, pointing towards the right slightly. It's not a perfectly centered shot. Oh. So here it is again. So we have a nice little push in. All right. So look at the direction of all these boys and Harry. They're looking to the left side of the screen because they've chosen a side of the line, the invisible line between them and this painting. Now they're on top of the line right here. Now, it might look like they've centered her up and put her on the line, but actually look at where her eye line is. It's actually opposite to what the boys are looking. So they're actually establishing that they're still on the correct side of that line. There's a wider shot of the same thing. So they're on the line, and then here's they actually still stay on the same side of the circle even as they enter this room. And so that's basically the understanding of what happened in that scene. If you look closely, you notice what's happening. I did my very best to, from a sky view, label what's happening in the scene. So if you imagine that oval shape with the nose, that's a group of boys. They come up to the painted door, and you have these few camera angles. The red is the camera angles, and the line, as you can see, is the invisible line, the green line that's running through the center. And then the kind of half circle with, let's just imagine that's the door. So you have all the boys facing the door, and you have a variety of camera angles. Before they go through the door, before the lady lets them through, you have a shot directly from the backside that's almost on top of the line. And then you have one that is from behind the boys showing the full scene again, but more at an angle than right on the line. And then you have close-ups of both of them. So you have a wider over the shoulder and then close-ups of both the door and the boys. And then once they walk through the door, you have a nice, still on the same side of the 180-degree circle, you have, or half circle, you have a panning truck shot that follows them through that room as they kind of keep interacting. So that's a really basic, clever way to set up a scene using the 180-degree rule. Let me know in the comments, are you following? Is this making sense, and is this helpful? If it is, give us a like. I'd love to interact with you in the comments. Let's keep watching some Harry Potter scenes. This next one is, there's a lot happening. So since you kind of understand this principle at this point, try to follow it as much as you can. Try to notice the details of where the camera is on the line that they have established for us in this scene.
Harry, you do realize what tree this is? That's not good. Run! Run! Harry, get behind you, run! It's the grip!
Okay, so far they've stayed on the same side of the line. And they're still kind of on the same side of the line, even if it's starting to get confusing. And look at this big wide shot here. You have, still on the same side of the line, you have an establishing wide shot of them and, well, yeah, of them and the tree. And it's having a nice swoop down. Okay. The key to understanding if you're confused about where they are on the line, if they're sticking true to it, is look at which way their eyes are looking off camera. That's a good indicator. All right, and that I stopped it there because pretty much that's when they start fighting with the tree, things get all mixed up. And usually battle or fight scenes or any scene with a lot of characters tends to not follow this as closely unless during that period there are two characters that are interacting. But it gets a little confusing, so I just wanted to keep it simple there. If you look at the diagram, I'm sure I didn't get all of them, but I tried to capture as many of the camera shots, or at least starting angles, as I could. And as you see, there's a lot of stuff, because not only do you have Ron, Hermione, and Harry, you also have the wolf, and you also have the tree. So there's a lot of moving parts to this scene, but if you look at this, at what I've done here, they're either on top of the line or right on the edge of the line, or they're backed away from the line. I've noticed Harry Potter tends to actually, not all films do this, but they flirt with almost filming right on top of that line a lot, a majority of the time. And so, it's just a choice. It's creative, but it's still technically correct. And it's fascinating to me that they were able to show that much action and give us that much information in the scene we just watched, and capturing so many angles and sweeping, moving angles and following shots and still stay within that rule. And so I would recommend, if you missed anything or you want to watch it again, just skip backwards a few seconds and take a look. Now that I've given you the diagram for 2 examples, I didn't create a third, but we're going to watch a third clip. The reason why is there's a lot that happens. I would recommend you go back and watch this through a few times to get a good grasp on this concept if you're not following, and try to follow this last scene. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, it's even hard for me to follow because there are so many people in this scene. It's the whole school, and it's they're all in the big room, and there's multiple characters interacting one-on-one, and they are constantly crossing the line or not even establishing where the line is, but there are probably like 10 different lines that are established in this one scene. So now that you understand this concept, let's all watch together this a little bit longer scene and just analyze it. Let's watch it together.
Sit down. Please. Now the moment you've all been waiting for. The champion selection.
This is always a cool scene for me when I was watching it. All right. Notice when it cut to Harry, we're not even really sure where Harry is in the room. We just know he is there. We know in order for him to look at Dumbledore, he has to turn his head like this. So it's already, the lines are a bit blurred, but they're about to establish a new one between the Flame and Dumbledore. And here it is.
The Dumpset champion is Victor Crumb.
And a lot of these cutaways where they show someone in the audience, it's obviously they're just having to cut to close-ups. And so I'm sure there was a lot of meaning behind where they were looking according to the room. It's just in the edit, it's harder to establish this. But it's worth trying as we continue watching. Okay, that's across the line. Okay, so there's another line. We've established what side we're on with him and her. And they're still on that same line. And they're still on the same side of the line.
We now have our 3 champions. But in the end, only one will go down in history. Only one will hoist this chalice of champions, this vessel of victory, the Triwizard Cup.
Okay. Now Snape is coming in and establishing a line as well. Look at his eye line. Now look at where he's looking. You can literally see the foreground, the middle ground, and the background all establish a very clear line. And look at where his eye line is facing. They haven't crossed that line that they just established. Now, this is a bit odd. They threw this shot in there, which breaks the line. I know they just needed a close-up of this fellow, but it just seemed odd to me as to why they would choose this shot and shoot on that side when they already had a very beautifully established line.
Harry Potter.
Still, they're still on the same side of the line.
Harry Potter!
For goodness.
And all these close-ups are throwing you off, I'm sure, but let's try to keep up. All right, so if you look to where Dumbledore is standing and the torch that they're getting the names out of, they're still on the same side of the line, even if they're kind of moving around in a corner. Now watch this. This is a good transition of shifting the line, as I've said at the beginning of the video. So they established a line, and they switch sides. Isn't that beautiful?
He's a cheat! You're not even 17 yet.
Now, notice where people are looking. They're looking like at the camera. It's all of the other shots outside of Harry is supposed to be his point of view. So it's basically on top of the line. And once they cut through all the professors, you notice that's where the line's kind of broken, and you're just kind of focusing more on Harry's point of view. This last scene has another good example of that I'm just going to continue on, but it has another good example of breaking the line and starting a new one. Here it comes. So they're standing in front of the fire. Try to remember that.
Harry, you put your name in the cover of the fire. Ask one of the older students to do it for you. No, sir. You're absolutely sure.
Yes, sir. And of course he is lying.
There he is. The cover of the fire.
So right now, so far, they've been on the same side of the line. And even they're going to cut to a close-up of the other champions in front of the fireplace. And this long shot, or this wide shot, is establishing where everyone is in the room.
It's an exceptionally powerful magical object. Only an exceptionally powerful confundus charm could have hoodwinked it. Magic way beyond the talents of a fortune.
Now, get ready. They're on the line. Now watch this. Did you see that? This guy walked straight through the line of Harry and Dumbledore and broke it and established a new line between him and what's the dude with the eyes name?
Mad-Eye Moody.
Mad-Eye Moody. A brand new line has been established because they literally broke it by walking through. And there he goes again. Once again, another break. This scene was crafted beautifully.
Leave this to you, Barty. The rules are absolute.
They're on the line. They've established a line between this guy and Dumbledore next to him.
It's vital that you come out tonight.
And they're still on the same side of the line.
Mr. Potter has no choice.
And switch.
As of tonight,
Isn't that beautiful? See, if you pay attention, you can actually really enjoy some of what these films are communicating to us, even as complex as or as hectic as that scene was, and you're so focused on the emotion of the characters, you're also not always paying attention to what the cinematographer and the director are communicating to us visually. And Harry Potter's actually can be kind of difficult to observe in this way. I had to watch these through a few times just to catch everything, but it's a whole lot of fun. It's like a game. I mean, ultimately, it's like a game, and it's been created for us to enjoy and play around with. So I hope this was educational. I hope this was fun. If you're a Harry Potter geek, I hope you learned something. Maybe it inspired you to become a filmmaker yourself. I hope so. I truly believe that if you understand these basic principles, you too can start making your stuff look cinematic and like Hollywood to some extent, like tomorrow or today. So thank you so much for watching the video. If you would like to watch another version of these analyzing production style videos, I did one recently where I talked about the basic framing that you need to understand, and I used Harry Potter as an example for that, as well as motivated lighting. So go check out that video. But coming up next, we have Wyatt, who's going to tell us and teach us about Snape, who he is as a character, what his motivations are, and I'm sure a whole bunch of other cool stuff. So I'll let him take a seat and we'll do a little switcheroo.
Hey there, thank you for clicking on the video. In this video, we're going to be talking about Severus Snape, his relationship with Harry Potter, and his overall motivations as a character, who he is, why he does what he does, and how that affects Harry in his life. Snape is probably one of the most complex characters in the Harry Potter universe, in the movies, in the books. He's got a lot going on, and he has a lot of interesting interactions with Harry. In fact, most characters have separate and unique interactions with Harry. As the focal point, as the main character, he's got to be the one that everybody sort of circles around. And Snape's sort of the way that Snape treats him, the way that he interacts with him is unique compared to a lot of the other characters, and just overall makes for an interesting look at how you can write a character and how you can enjoy a character who is sort of an anti-hero, so to speak, not the main character, not the main protagonist, and maybe even seen as the villain at times. So first, we're just going to kind of talk about an overall psychology of who Snape is, where he's at the beginning, in the middle, in the end. So coming into Hogwarts, Snape was he was an outcast. He was kind of a freak, and he bonds with Harry's mother, Lily Evans, and they become friends. But he's always sort of been disliked. He's been hated. And then he comes into this school where they split them up into different houses, and he gets put into the house that is the most disliked. It's the most hated. And it's away from this friend that he has made. And so right off the bat, he's not starting out good. He's not starting out great. His thought processes throughout this entire ordeal he's probably not in a good headspace. In the books, it mentions that when he showed up to Hogwarts, he had the most knowledge of curses out of any other student because he was not vindictive, but the type of person who takes revenge when people say mean things, do mean things to him. He wants to get revenge, and so he's practiced curses and he knows a ton of them. Moving forward, he continues to be misunderstood, unliked by other characters, and just an outcast. And that doesn't help when Harry's dad, I'm blanking on his name. You got it, Joe? Harry's dad is a bully. He's cocky. He's good at everything. He's he's on the Quidditch team. He's great at Quidditch, and he sees Snape, who is also very good at everything, but is in the house that he dislikes and is his natural enemy, as competition. So he makes fun of him. He bullies him. He tortures him with mean words and things. So throughout school, Snape endures constant dislike and hatred from other students, and even at times from Lily, who is his best friend and the person that he's in love with. At the end of the school year, she falls in love with Mr. Potter and James. There it is. She falls in love with James around the 7th year. They don't explain it well in the movies, but he loses that cockiness. He stops being that person, and she comes to like him, and they get married and they have Harry. But then again, Snape is outcast. He's outside. He's not a part of the life of the person that he wanted to be with the most. And so to try and impress her and to try and show her that in some strange, messed up way that he's powerful, he joins the Death Eaters and works for Voldemort for a while, and is even partially responsible for Voldemort finding Harry's parents and killing them, and he feels a lot of guilt over that. And that's ultimately when he changes sides. He sees the error of his ways. He goes to Dumbledore and becomes a double agent, essentially. And Dumbledore trusts him because Dumbledore trusts his love for Lily. Now, going into adult life, going into teaching, we continue to have just the same thing he's experienced his whole life. Dislike, hatred, and he sort of leans into it. He's not the type of guy who is going to try to make people like him. So when Harry comes onto the scene, Harry becomes sort of a lightning rod for Snape's bitterness and his anger. He looks so much like James, and they mention that a lot. He looks just like James. He has Lily's eyes, and even though Harry's not trying to, he has already established a potential for being another James. And so Snape kind of takes his anger out on Harry, and he mistreats him, he bullies him. Oftentimes people in a position of power, especially over students, they just making their life miserable as much as he can, because his life was miserable due to the actions of this boy's father. So right off the bat, right at the beginning, Harry isn't, he's not the most liked by Snape. But, you know, as we move forward through the story, we kind of get this feeling that Harry is a mirror of Snape's life and vice versa. Snape is essentially everything that Harry could have become. He could have been sorted into Slytherin, and so Harry, who would have gone from being hated and despised by his family, his uncle and aunt and his cousin, could have gone into the house that everybody hates and despises, and his fame and reputation would eventually make him disliked by other people. And so he could have followed in a similar path as Snape, which is interesting to note that he chooses Hogwarts, or not Hogwarts, but he chooses Gryffindor because he doesn't want to be associated with Malfoy, and he doesn't want to be associated with the darker side of the wizarding world, because he was already disliked a lot of his life. And so that sort of leads me to Snape's treatment of Harry in kind of my own theory. I think at the beginning it was dislike. It was a simple just taking out that bitterness on him, and that you know, all the trauma he experienced when he was a kid. But it also keeps Harry away from Slytherin. It keeps him on a better path, and it keeps him away from the darker side of magic, which the Slytherin students tend to lean towards. And it keeps Harry away from their thinking. And so Severus essentially, he sets himself up as he sets himself up to be sort of what you don't want, what Harry doesn't want to be. Since Harry hasn't, he at the very beginning, he hasn't come in contact with Voldemort, not in the first book or movie. And so Severus, sort of clears that path in Harry's mind. You don't want to be this. And I don't know if that was Snape's intention or if it just happened naturally. It could have been a sort of way of protecting Harry. It also goes into a further theory I have, sort of. He's always sort of trying to get Harry expelled. He's always trying to get him out because of, some thing that Harry did that Snape misconstrues as being cocky and arrogant. But also he may see it as a better way to protect Harry is for him not to be at Hogwarts, for him not to be around these people. In the books, they establish that Harry has a protection over him when he's at home. When he's with a blood relative, he has a further protection beyond Lily's protection that she inadvertently cast on him when she died, when he's at home. So Snape might be trying to push him back there, get him out of the school to keep him safe, because ultimately Snape's goal is to keep Harry safe, even though he doesn't like him. And that's an interesting thing for a character to have in one of your main characters, that they really don't like your protagonist, but they have to keep them safe for some reason. Now, moving forward after the Goblet of Fire, Voldemort he's come back, he's the ultimate evil, and things are becoming reestablished. The Death Eaters are becoming reestablished. The people going missing. All sorts of different stuff that's happening. So the mistreatment that Snape shows towards Harry is crucial now, that even though Harry knows Dumbledore trusts Snape, it's sort of crucial that Harry doesn't like Snape, because eventually Snape goes with Voldemort. He becomes a Death Eater again, even though he's a double agent. He's not really. He's trying to foil Voldemort. And I think if Harry had established some sort of bond with Snape when they were practicing keeping Voldemort out of his mind, or at any other point, if he had established some sort of bond, something that they could have together that was good, it wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have been quite so believable for other characters when, as the story progresses, Harry hates Snape for the decisions that he made, for killing Dumbledore, everything. And so it becomes very crucial for the story that happens. And sort of wrapping things up, one of the important things towards the end of the story that we learn about Snape at the very end is that his goal is to keep Harry alive. But it's more than that for Snape as a character. For Dumbledore, it's protecting the world. For Snape, it's protecting the world. For Harry, it's protecting the world. But for Snape, it is keeping Lily's memory alive by keeping her son alive. And I think he comes to the conclusion that if Harry is worth dying for, from Lily's perspective, the person that Snape loved his whole life, then Harry's worth dying from Snape's perspective as well. He's worth sacrificing himself for. And when he does that, when he gives him the tears, he's not just giving him the information that he needs to know from his talks with Dumbledore about Harry needing to die at the right time. And we established that in a previous video. So if you're interested in that information, go back and watch the other video. We talk about the right time for Harry to die. But in this particular scene, the tears, I feel like, from Snape, his intention more is to give Harry more memories of his mother, to keep alive more memories of the person that he loved most. And that was his ultimate goal. There's Snape's famous line. He says, when Dumbledore asks, he's like, oh, after all this time, you still love her. After all this time, he says, always. There's another line in the books when Dumbledore asks him, how many people have you had to watch die? And Snape says, recently, only the ones that I can't save. So ultimately, Snape's goal was to keep people alive. He was a hero, but he wasn't necessarily a great guy. And sometimes that's okay. In the last video, we talked about Harry being the antithesis of what a hero is supposed to be and what you're supposed to look for when you're on that hero road. Snape doesn't do that. He is who he is, and he has to live with the things that have happened to him, and he does things that we don't necessarily like, aimed at our main character, that aren't good. They're not kind. But ultimately, as a character, he's one of the best because his motivations are some of the strongest. And again, I keep referencing to that previous video. I talk about motivations being strong. Why Harry beats Voldemort ultimately is because Harry's motivation is stronger than Voldemort's. And Snape's motivations throughout the entire story are some of the strongest because it's some of the purest. It's love for somebody that he loved more than anyone else in the world. And so that's kind of where we're going to end. If you guys have anything you want to say, you have any topics or anything you want me to talk about, you got something to say about Snape, you got a favorite moment from the books or movies, leave them in the comments. Subscribe to the channel, give us a like. check out our previous videos. You know, Joe goes into a lot of the filmmaking aspects, and I'm doing character breakdowns and story breakdowns. So if that's your thing, you know, stick around. And we're just going to transition now into the last part of this video. So thanks for watching. Whew. Man.
Where's my seat?
It's over there. I think I actually took your seat. The way that they get thrown around because we got to get them out of. Were you crying? Did I
A little
have you
bit.
crying?
Now, Snape is close to my heart, man.
Mm-hmm.
Something about Snape, maybe it's just who he is as a character. Maybe it's the acting quality. Who knows?
There's a lot in the acting. Alan Rickman kills it.
He always does. I'm just saying, like, I don't know, Snape, the concept of going through his life, going through his hurts, his motivations, and then where he ends up. Your bit about if Harry was good enough to die for the person that I love so much, then he's worth me sacrificing myself for him as well. Yeah. That's a beautiful concept. Even though, you know, the one he loved was Harry's mom, and Harry had a dad who was kind of a meanie head. Snape is in a lot of ways a pure character.
Yeah. Oh yeah, very much so. Even the, you know,
a lot of pain.
Lot of pain. And it's hard to forgive some of the things he does to Harry, but let's be honest, hurt people.
That's right.
But it doesn't mean that they can't protect people.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite scenes in all of the movies is when Lupin starts changing into a werewolf. And you've got Ron and Harry and Hermione, and Lupin starts changing, and Severus pushes them all behind him and puts his arms out.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful moment.
It's the purest moment of protection over children.
I know.
That everything else, every other
matter.
Emotion leaves.
Yeah.
You
and
know?
It's like, I love this man.
Yeah.
This wizard.
I love characters that you don't know their motivations. You don't like them. Yeah. They're not great people, but then they turn out to be way more than you thought.
Yeah.
They turn out to be such good characters.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
And Snape's lovable.
He is.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not early on while you're still trying to figure him out, but Snape is lovable. He's a great character.
And, you know, I'll say this. I learned, not this isn't about Snape. I was going to talk about your stuff a little bit. I learned a lot from the 180 degree rule. Yeah.
What did you learn?
That sometimes it's hard to distinguish exactly where that line is. Yeah. I never noticed.
The trick is the eye line.
I never noticed in that scene after they pull the ticket out of the goblet of fire. They kept breaking the line with somebody walking right down the middle.
Yeah, you mean down in where the fireplace was?
Yeah.
That thing. The thing is though, that looks like chaos as far as scene goes. But if you really pay attention, if you really pay attention,
through.
Two, and then he starts back to back breaking of the line, physically breaking,
and then
Dumbledore's little head just popped
and
through.
then he starts talking to Barty Crouch.
Yeah,
it's just.
And the thing is, back to back, both in the hall with all the students and then down in the fireplace room, they had that beautiful, very intentional cinematic, very, very rule following way of transitioning the line when they went behind Dumbledore when he gave the ticket to Harry. And then later when, what was his name again? Where at the end when it crosses back behind Dumbledore again. When he addresses
Karkaroff?
Harry. I think so, yeah. When he tells Harry it's a binding spell.
Barty Crouch.
Barty Crouch. When Barty Crouch addresses Harry and it passes behind Dumbledore again, because now the line is established with Harry and Barty Crouch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've noticed that a lot of shows and movies. I was watching Ozark, on Netflix. And they had a scene where two of the characters were a decent length apart. We're talking like 2.5 car lengths apart talking to each other. And I was watching that 180 degree rule, but it's extremely cinematic when your characters are far apart.
Yeah.
It's very nice to see, it switch from here sort of around where this person is seeing them from and then switch over here.
Yeah.
It's and I realize you get that in a lot of the old samurai movies where the characters are standing a significant distance apart, and you get that back and forth. It makes for really great storytelling.
Yeah, it does. And if you combine it with what I talked about last week, where you shoot shadow side, well, then you combine that with lighting setup mixed with what side will you be shooting on according to this 180-degree rule. So if you combine those two, well, you're making stuff Hollywood makes.
I've noticed they shoot Snape a lot from not opposite. From
not
like
shadow
the
side.
Light side.
Yeah,
because
I don't know.
it makes him. It makes when you shoot from the light side, it makes the character look ominous.
Yeah, you get harsher shadows usually. A lot of times, if the light's above them, you can get eye shadows, which can cause them to look like a skeleton. Sometimes, you know, it's a very. I mean,
look for that. Look for that in a movie where you got an ominous characters. Look which side they're filming on, because when they film not shadow side, it makes it gives it an eerie feeling.
Absolutely.
You don't know why, but if you're looking for it, you know why.
Yeah, and and I guess to kind of close us off, I didn't realize this until I was really studying, but I love that scene with the wolf and Ron and Hermione and Harry and the tree, because they followed the 180-degree rule so close through that whole sequence we watched. I mean, it was perfect, but every shot was dollying in, sweeping around, you know, zooming out. They even stood on the line, not technically stood, but kind of, to get that shot where the wolf jumps over them. They were basically on top of the line and watched it go straight over them.
You ever seen The Matrix?
Well, yeah.
Okay. I don't know. Sometimes you never know. The scene where Keanu Reeves is fighting Morpheus. In that scene, they have a specific 180-degree rule.
Yeah.
They cross that line a bunch, but it's never, ever... it never feels jarring, because when they do, it's always that around the back.
Yes.
Or Neo jumps up and it does a spin around and it establishes the whole room. So you're always following exactly where the fight is.
And the reason why you always want to see when the camera crosses the line is going back to that original concept. If the audience could see that we switch sides, then it's easier to follow where the characters are. But if you just cut to the other side, then it's harder to tell, especially with low quality film.
You're also trying to establish where everything is.
Yeah.
You've got a room, you got a TV, a lamp, but back here there's a picture, and over here there's a vase. If you break the rule unnecessarily, now I don't know where things are in the room.
Yeah.
It can be difficult.
And that's why it was difficult when they're addressing all the students, why it's harder to follow, and they just kind of stuck with close-ups.
I think you assume that Gandalf, that Dumbledore is in the middle.
Well, he's actually kind of in the back towards where the door is.
The Goblet of Fire sort of in the middle,
And there was actually a scene I was going to pull. It was another train scene where the Dementors attack them on the train for the first time. Cinematically, I watched it through quite a few times. They break the rule because they're in a train cart and it's a lot more complex. They break the rule over and over and over again in that scene. You're never, I mean, thank goodness we have high quality video, because if we didn't, you wouldn't be able to follow that scene at all, because they're all over the place. I mean, 1 minute they're facing the window, the next minute they're looking through the window. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it's all over the place.
Well,
I wanted to... Maybe as a bad example.
Now that we're doing this series and I'm reading the books and I just recently watched the movies, I want to watch them again, because now I want to look for the cinematic stuff.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, you can do this with every film. Every movie you can do this with. It'll be real fun if you start getting into the more classic cinema, like with Godfather and, obviously Steven Spielberg stuff in the 80s and 70s. But that era of filming was...
I'd like to
beautiful.
take a look at like some, like the Maltese Falcon or Casablanca or some of those older ones.
Yeah.
Just to look at some of the camera work.
Yeah. You can even look at cool stuff like something simple, like Sound of Music. They I mean, they were high production. They had beautiful filming in that as well. And you can learn film and understand it as long as you watch videos like this. You learn the principles, and then you start studying how it's implemented.
Right, and these are easy videos to follow.
Easy.
I found that they're super easy, and they enhance how I watch movies.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But don't start acting like a smart aleck because you have a little tidbit.
Right.
Figure out all the details and start understanding why filmmakers chose to do certain things before you say they're wrong.
Don't be sitting with your friends and be like, I can't believe they broke the 180-degree rule there.
And then you're just looking around the room waiting for someone to say, what's that?
What's
What's
I know
that?
people like that. Where they say something.
Well, actually, the 180-degree rule.
They're like, wait for somebody to respond.
You gonna ask me? You gonna ask me?
Oh,
anyways, good show.
Yeah, good show.
Good show, Wyatt. Great learning about Snape.
Show.
Good show. Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
we'll see you next week. Subscribe to the channel. We love you. We have a podcast, Wiseworks Podcast. Comes out on Mondays, 7 a.m. Midnight special, audio only. All the audio platform podcast places, 10 p.m. Friday nights. 2 a week.
Yes.
We love you. Bye.
Bye.